This morning I would like to highlight on this very Bible verse. It says, as just our sir has read, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about the weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. For when I am weak, I am strong." When we study about the life of St. Paul, the life of St. Paul, we understand based on the scripture, he was not a simple man. He was well educated, learned man. He had PhD, and if we compare today context, he had 10 PhD. It means he was not nut fellow. He had philosophy in his mind, and he was well learned, equipped individual. And here St. Paul says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for the power is made perfect in weakness." How could this individual who was well educated, well learned, well equipped, and was very strong in his faith, and he was the member of Sanhedrin, and today context, he was the member of parliament. He was a strong man, and he has all the power and authority. And here he says, "My grace is sufficient for you." The personal encounter he had with Christ, that itself made him to realize that my strength, my worldly ability is just a dung, cow dung. It doesn't have any value. Only Christ, He is the God, He is the Creator. He is the God who gives knowledge. He is the God who gives power. He only can sustain my life. He only can help me to grow and serve that God. And the book of Acts narrates how he was already preoccupied with his mind and planned to go to the Damascus, destroy Christianity, drag them and put them in the prison. He had already preoccupied his mind, and he was going according to his plan. But on the way of Damascus, he had that personal encounter with Christ, and that made him to realize, I am nothing. I am nothing. And here, based on his experience, he says, "My grace is sufficient for you." Christ, when he experienced the Christ, he understood that these worldly things will not help me. This worldly power, the worldly authority that I have, the worldly leadership power I have, it is useless. It is useless. It will not sustain me in the lifelong. And that is what he understand based on his experience, and he surrendered himself. He emptied himself, and he says, "Lord, your grace is sufficient for me to serve you, to use that authority, to use that ability, to use that what I have known and what I have learned, what I know, I surrender to you, and please use me." And that is what the apostle Paul could make his final decision. And this morning I would like to encourage each one of us. Sometime we human being think about our past resources that we have, the ability that we have, the authority that we have, the power that we have. Based on that, if we think we can do lot of things for God, it will not help. But when we surrender that into the hands of God, He will use us much more than what we can expect. That is what is the lesson we should learn from St. Paul's life. And of course, sometimes we ignore that education is not useful. No, we understand based on his life, his education God used and mightily used. And he became a great apostle after the 12 apostles. If you remove the St. Paul from the New Testament, we have only handful gospel. But St. Paul's life had been a great blessing for the church and for the Gentiles and for all of us. And let us surrender what we have. Whatever we have, whether we have money, whether we have education, whether we have a good background, whatever we have, if we surrender that to the Lord, He will use us mightily. That is what we learn from His life, and that is what He experienced. Lord, your grace is sufficient for me. That grace that leads me to glorify you. That grace leads me to magnify you and glorify you, and that grace is what I need, O Lord. Not what I have, but your grace that will lead me, that will give me life, that will sustain me forever and ever. And that is what we learn from his life. And then second phrase, it says, my power is made perfect in weakness. He understood, of course, in the context of Roman, they understand the dignity, status, power. They were hungry after it. The Roman, they were very hungry after the power. They were thirsty after this, all the worldly things which we can imagine. And the administration of Rome is very much known to everyone. And based on this St. Paul experience, he says, Lord, and here the phrase is, my power is made perfect in weakness. He realized that, God, I'm nothing. Use me as a vessel for your glory. And he surrendered his life. He surrendered his life, he surrendered his power, everything is surrendered to God, and he understood that the only cross is the only way which can save our life. And cross in those days was the shameful thing. It was not the today we understand. We accept cross with honor, with dignity, but in those days, cross was a shameful thing. And Paul, he accepted the cross and followed Christ. He surrendered his life, he surrendered his power, everything what he had, and followed Christ. And he knew that, Lord, when I am weak, you help me to be strong for your glory and for your ministry. That is what we learn from his life. And even when we read the epistle of Philippians, he says, Lord, I will empty myself, I will make myself humble, I will surrender myself. He surrendered his life. He surrendered his life completely. He surrendered his ego. He surrendered everything what he had, and completely he gave his life to the Lord. And let us be reminded, whatever strength or whatever we have, and if we feel we are weak in certain area, let us surrender to the Lord and say, Lord, I am weak, please help me. And God will definitely help us, as did God help St. Paul. And of course, he had a physical sickness. It is not much revealed in the Bible. He had some kind of thorn. He often came to Lord in prayer and asked, Lord, heal me, heal me. And then Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. Sometimes this thorns also helps us to go to the Lord, constantly go to him. And whatever weakness we have, sometimes that weakness helps us to humble ourselves, help us to completely depend on God. And may God help us to surrender our life to Him. His grace is sufficient for us, and in our weakness, He will sustain us. He will help us to continue depend on Him and glorify His name through whatever we have. May God bless us.